Hello, good afternoon, and welcome. Here we are doing a ZenTech remote broadcast recording for the Christmas Eve show. And we have in the home studio here two gentlemen that are going to talk about an app that runs on an iPhone by the name of Monad. So right here with me right now is what would you call yourself, Keith? Principal author?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right.
Sure.
And with Keith is also...
Thomas Spellman, lead programmer.
And we'll talk about the Monad software in a moment, but this is written currently principally to run on an iPhone, right?
Currently principally for the iPhone, but we just released an Android build and we're working on a VR build at the moment.
If you want to learn more about it, the website for this is Monad.Earth. That's Monad.Earth, E-A-R-T-H. So you can now get funky top-level domains like Earth.
Yeah.
All right. What does Monad mean, Keith?
Well, monad, the word monad has been around for a long time. The Greeks talked about monads, units, that everything was made up of. It's like atomism to a certain extent is monadic. But it's taken on more of a guy named Leibniz who invented calculus around the same time as Isaac Newton. He wrote a book called Monadology, and he talks about how monads are individual units which holographically reflect the entire world around them. So
you're saying the sum is more than the total of the parts?
Well, it's sort of like David Bowman, the implicate order. It's like the whole is enfolded into the part. So you're a monad. Any living object is a monad, and the solar system is monadic, and the Earth is a monad, like a whole within a greater whole.
Does it have to be a part of something? When you say there's a monad like your software, and we talked about this right before this recording, which was to say you got to stop somewhere so we don't we go outside our solar system and our stars, but we don't leave our galaxy a whole lot. So this particular monad is most of the things we can see in the night sky. Would that be true?
Well, we see mainly within our galaxy. We don't. Theoretically, it extends out to infinity.
Right.
But our resolution is pretty limited, actually. We only show the major stars.
So when you bring this app up,
when
you bring up this app on your iPhone, which you can get from the App Store for the iPhone.
Yep.
When you bring this app up, when I've seen it, I'm impressed with the fact that it looks very elegant, even if I didn't know what it was doing. And there's fun on the two levels. One of them is unwrapping the confection and the other one's eating it, because it's really good eye candy, and it's hard to get a comprehensive, powerful app that's good at eye candy as well. So I was impressed with that. You can zoom in and out. You can go outside the orbit of the planets, go inside and get this solar-centric view.
Yeah.
How many different views are there of our solar system?
Well, there's heliocentric mode, which is sun-centered. Yeah. There's a geocentric mode, which is Earth-centered. And there's another mode, it's called chakra mode, where it's also Earth-centered, but it's focused on the ecliptic instead of the celestial equator. So it has a different motion.
And that's the plane in which most of the planets go, more or less. And I'm saying this
exactly
because it's not absolutely flat.
Right. It is. It's a composite of all of the planets, but they're very close to each other. None of them, except for Pluto, are more than like 2 or 3 degrees off of that.
So everything's a bit wobbly,
plane.
But Pluto is very wobbly.
Pluto goes out to, I think, like it's tilted almost 19 degrees. Is that about right?
Yeah.
16?
About right.
Yeah.
That upset people when they were saying it's not a planet, and they compromised by keeping the word planet inside the word planetoid to make people be quiet about it.
Yeah, no, I like it as a planet.
Yeah, that's what I was raised with. Now, when I look at the app, it also has the 12 signs of the zodiac. Is there an astrological function in the software, or is it principally astronomical?
Well, the signs are astronomical
anyway,
defined, actually. I mean, they're 30-degree segments along the ecliptic.
So 12 of them is 360, which is our sky.
So really, they're date-telling devices. They're related to the nodes, so they align the year with the seasons. So it's a seasonal year, and so they're useful as date tellers. It'd be crazy not to use them on a calendar clock.
By the way, I got tangled up with an argument, and I mean that in a philosophical sense, not actually beating anyone up, about the fact that the ancients that lived in North America that made petroglyphs, which is engravings on stones, marked out the solstices. They would observe the furthest north point that the sun set on the horizon. They would mark out with a line on rocks the furthest south point that the sun set on the horizon. And my friend Bill, that I had a discussion with, and I said, well, that must have changed over time. The answer is the date has, the angle hasn't. The Earth's been tilted at about 22.5 degrees, much longer than the fact that it's been zooming around in precession. So there is a slight change in 22.5 degrees tilt, but nothing to change the fact the ancients observed what we can observe today, but on a different date. But they didn't have a calendar as we do, so it didn't matter.
Now, if they had made a correlation with a constellation, that would have changed.
Yes, it would. And interestingly, the Mayans who observed such things, concentrating on the setting of the dog star Sirius, which is a very bright star in the sky. They didn't use the moon and they didn't use the sun because they must have gone, this is too screwy. There's plenty of stars and they're all, most stars, when I say most stars, they're in conformity with each other. The observation of planets was such that they were thought to be wandering stars that got a bit lost, but 99.9999% of the night sky behaves itself pretty well over long periods of time, right?
Yep.
The software that you've got, Monad, where would you start with it if you fired the thing up and took a good look at it?
Say it again?
If you started up the application Monad on an iPhone.
Where would I start with it?
That would be different. Where would I start with it? What's the first view you get, the default view?
The default view, it's now we've added a tour at the beginning. So when you open it up for the first time, it sort of introduces you to, we're employing a very unusual perspective. It's called the axial perspective. And we have an hour hand attached to the Earth, marking your location, your longitude and your latitude. And so you're looking at the Earth, you see the entire north hemisphere. So ordinarily you look from the equatorial perspective at the Earth, right?
Right.
But so you're looking at it different. So it allows you to see we've got a number dial, a 24-hour number dial inside the celestial equator, inside a Earth-centered celestial ring. So it allows you to tell time and date. And we've got a calendar band which is aligned relative to the ecliptic and the nodes, which is the original astronomical calendar. So it's just an unusual way of looking at space and time.
Now, the iPhone knows your physical location, so it's going to give you the point of view that you have.
It sets that
within a
hour
fairly
hand for
close degree of accuracy for where you are on the Earth's surface, right?
Exactly, very precise.
And when you mentioned the clock paradigm, is that what you would see when you're looking straight up at a certain hour? Is that what it is, or can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah, noon is defined based upon people's early experiments with the sundial, basically.
Right.
So when noon is when the sun is directly overhead, and that's 12 o'clock. So now when the hour hand is pointing directly at the sun, that's noon, because you are associated with the hour hand at the base of the hour hand, right, is where you're located, somewhere along that base.
I always thought it was interesting to consider that we have the 30-degree time zones in the United States, but they're not
15
perfectly...
degree.
I beg your pardon, 15 degrees.
Yeah.
And they cannot be perfectly drawn over the state lines because the state lines weren't drawn at 15-degree intervals.
Yeah.
So there's some kinkiness involved.
Exactly.
And if you travel from the edge of one time zone to the next time zone, you're basically moving in meridian time by an hour. And if you were to go right around the Earth just in an afternoon when you fancied a little tour, you'd actually do the 360.
Yep.
And 24 hours.
And there's some countries that, just for the sake of the convenience of everybody being on the same time zone, some countries that span 2 or even 3 time zones will actually all just use one time. So people at the east end of the country and at the west end of the country are having 2 fairly different experiences.
They do that in China. So they have what they call, I guess, federal time or civil time, which is the trains and the planes all run on Beijing Standard Time.
Right.
In the same way as Britain used to run on Greenwich Mean Time, which is now called Universal Time. But local time is still used, but not for planes and trains.
And it's 5. China covers 5 time zones.
And Russia's even more. It's like 11, I think, something like that.
Yeah,
so they probably got Moscow time for all the civil things that they're doing. All right, well, we're up to about that was a good talk there. We took about, I'm looking at the wrong clock on there. Yeah, 9 minutes. We're coming up for a 10-minute interview. That's great. What would you like to say to sum up?
I think there's a lot to be gained from using Monad. It's really beautiful. It makes you feel whole and connected to the solar system. And I look at an ordinary clock now, 1 through 12 clock, and it's just so boring to me. It's like, why would people want to use this thing? Monad, just, you know where the moon is, you know where the planets are. There's so much information there, and it's all so beautiful.
I like the fact that it gives you a tour to begin with, because there's some apps, when you bring them up, they go, right, it's up to you. Never seen me before, but you're on your own, buddy, which is okay. I'll push buttons. So yours gives a little tour.
Yep.
Here's a question. When you're developing the software, can you determine which version of the Apple operating system it works on? Or are you bound by the fact that Apple says you can't make it for anything older than an iPhone 10, for example?
There, to some degree, both are true, but you can, in addition to Apple's limits, you can say this has to run on, X phone version or newer, but for the most part, we just make it run on the widest range of phones that we can.
The reason I'm saying that is I've spoken on one of these shows before about those folks who are left with old iPads from 10 years ago that can't run the latest software. I would love to be able to use an iPad, stick it on the wall with double-sided tape, and have Monad running on it as a proper clock.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
Right, well, thanks very much, guys. In this recording in studio with me today at the home office is
Keith Witten.
And Thomas Spellman.
And Polly Castro hosting
Thank
the
you,
Zentek
Polly.
Show. You're very welcome.
Thanks, Paul.
Let's see how that went. Take care, guys. Bye for now.